This is one of the few songs I've written that was inspired before the fact. I mean, they happen by themselves sort of as accidents, and then I try and figure out where they came from, and there's usually some connection that I can make. I wrote this for my father, who's one of those people who was condemned to a working life at a labor he did not choose. I mean, his talent is not one that you can sell in the marketplace, so whatever he did, it was basically not his real nature. He sold chip beef early on in northern Minnesota. Food invented during World War II. People about to die. And he was a golf course professional for a while, a couple of courses, and eventually went to work for the government where he could indulge his real talent, but not to its full extent, and where he was still paid for something other than his talent being sleep. My father is legendary for the way he can sleep. He's envied by people, and he looked forward to retirement, obviously, because then he could sleep all he wanted to. And it's not something that he would do as a sort of a party stunt, for example. It would just come upon him oftentimes at parties, as I understand it. He's fallen asleep standing up on a city bus. He's fallen asleep behind the wheel of several moving cars, which, of course, is something that the rest of us didn't appreciate or admire or envy. And this tune was written after he'd retired and began to indulge himself. This happened late on a Sunday afternoon when he had decided to go out and to the porch and, sort of, this is in Virginia, and started, drift away. And while there, he decided to really put his nose to the grindstone, so instead of just falling asleep there, he got up and went to bed to take a nap for about an hour and a half or so, and took off all his clothes, his shoes, and fell asleep. He woke up thinking, I don't know, after a couple hours, thinking that it was morning and that he'd been in bed all night long and that it was time once again to get up, which, for a guy with his abilities is probably a depressing moment. He can, for example, get up after 8 hours of solid sleep and go right back to bed, sleep for another couple hours, and feel even better than he did after the 8 hours. In this case, he got up, and most of us, by the time our feet hit the floor, are aware of what happens. I mean, I think it's probably happened to all of us. He didn't, and I think probably because he relishes that sort of twilight between sleep and waking up. And he walked out to the kitchen where my mother just happened to be fooling around doing whatever she was doing out there. And he said, "What's for breakfast?" Because that's how their division of labor works. And she's used to these sort of non sequiturs, so she said, "Well, how about some eggs?" And he said, "Fine." And she made the eggs. They sat down at the kitchen table. And while he was eating his eggs, she and he were talking, and he was looking over her shoulder and out the kitchen window to where it was getting darker outside. This is true. And my father does, as I may have mentioned before, my father, or as you might be able to tell already, my father doesn't take a philosophical approach to life. Things are either on or they're off, and if he has to think about them for any length of time, he prefers to go to sleep and wait till it's over with or it's solved itself. So he decided that the world was coming to an end. And what I like about this is that he decided not to tell his wife. He didn't want to worry her. maybe she won't notice, and it should all be better for her that way. What he did instead was he got up and drove around in a family car to see what everybody else was doing now that the world was coming to an end. And by now it was getting dark on a Sunday, so people were lined up waiting to go into church, which struck such a note of terror in his heart that he did wake up. I like to think that he discovered some of the consolations of philosophy after this. This is called the late zone.